Hi guys. So this is our latest video. We're going to talk about writing your own return value functions. Um, so to write a value returning function, you just write a simple function and you add one or more return statements. So we've seen some return statements earlier in some of the earlier examples. Um, so return and an expression. So the value of expression, whatever that evaluates to, is returned to the part of the program that called the function. So the way that we do this is just like we saw before in the area statement. You just say something like a equals and then your function call with your parentheses or parameters or whatever you pass in. Um, and the expression can be a single variable, a single value, an arithmetic expression. It could be another function call. It can be anything that's going to evaluate basically to some sort of a value. Um, there's not really any limitation on that. Alright, so here's an example of one. We have def num1, num2. So num1 and num2 are parameters. The result is that we add num1 and num2, and then we just return result. So when we return result, that's the value that's going to come back. If I call this function, I said a equals sum 1 comma 3, then the result would be stored in a when the function finished running, and that would be 4, or 4, and then that's how it works. So that's how the returns work, and that's how value returning functions work. All right, so you can use these in a lot of different ways. You can have the function prompt the user for input, and you can return the input. You can simplify mathematical expressions, so you can put a mathematical expression in a function. You can do any type of complex calculation that needs to be repeated through the program. So for the return value, typically what we either do is we either assign it to a variable. We'll say something like in our other example, if you remember from our previous example, we say, you know, a equals area, and then we pass in the radius. You can either do that, or you can actually also pass it as a function value. So to see how that works, we could actually just say something like in our example code, we could say print area, and then we could pass in, let's say, 4. And what this would do is it'll run the function. It'll return the area for a circle with a radius of 4, and then it'll print that value immediately. We don't have to assign it to intermediate value. We can print it straight. So you'd only do this if you didn't need to save the value for anything. If you just wanted to calculate it and print it, that's fine. In some cases, you want to save it and then use it for something. Then you need to assign it to a variable. Otherwise, it's not assigned to anything, right? Um, so functions can return lots of things. They can return strings. For example, if we use input and we say name equals input, enter your name, we can actually return the name. You can return actually any type of variable or any type of expression. So we can do strings. We can do Boolean functions. So you can return a true or a false. Let's say we want to determine, we write a function that tells us if the number is even. If we do that, we can try to divide it by 2 or mod by 2. If it's 0, we return true. If it's 1, we return false. So we can validate input calculation. We can do input validation with Boolean functions that return is it valid, is it not valid. We can do lots of things with functions. There's lots of cases. Other things might be you want to write to a file, you return true if it succeeds, you return false if you fail to write to the file. There's lots of cases where you can return Booleans from functions. It can be very useful. We can also return multiple values. Again, this is something that I showed you in an earlier video, but we're going to go into a little more detail here. So the way that we do that is in our return statement, we just separate the things that we want to return by commas. So we say return expression 1, comma expression 2. So this could be like return A, comma B, comma C. We could return as many things as we like, actually. So when you call a function like that, what you have to do is do exactly the same syntax on the equals. So you'd say A comma B comma C equals function call, whatever function you're going to call. So again, we saw some examples of that. I think if you look in project 2, which you should be looking at by now, you'll see some examples of that. In fact, I asked you to write a function that does this with the dies. And so the way you do that is you just generate 2 random numbers. You call return, die1 comma die2, and that will return both values. And then when you call that function, you just say die1 comma die2 equals, roll the dice, end function, open and close parentheses. So you can return as many things as you want. You're not limited to two. You just have to store them all when you make a function call. All right. So that's it. We're going to talk about the math module in the next section. That's it for this video, though. I hope you understand how to do returns and how to do value returning functions.